when we were looking for the house, we were not initially looking for a side split. But after not finding an appropriate bungalow, we decided to look at a few other houses. And then we looked at this side split, and we looked at a few other side splits, and this had a perfect location as far as like where there was a linen closet, so we wouldn't interfere or take away from any of the rooms. And at the time of the house inspection, we also had a contractor here who made sure that an elevator would fit in where we had thought it would fit in. So we wanted to know before we signed the final papers that it would all work according to the proper measurements, not just my engineer brother. Originally what we were going to do, so this is the garage, right? And we were just going to do the elevator where it is, but then you would have had to have a ramp into the elevator and a ramp into the house because there was a door separating the garage and the house. And then my brother had the brilliant idea of building a mudroom. Why don't you do a mudroom? Which is like the best thing ever. So, I mean, and with the door too, like I can open the garage door and see exactly when Sophie's bus is here and not here. So, you know, you come in the ramp. Normally what we do when we come home is she goes in the family room, or also in the morning we're in the family room. So we just leave from here to go in and out of the house. So it was just like the old garage. I would have to open the screen door and the other door and go up a 8-inch step. So then I would have to carry her up the stairs if I wanted to go up to the bathroom or to the kitchen or dining room or living room. My brother was with us when we went with the real estate agent and looked around. And he looked at it differently than we did because, of course, I saw stairs and went, no way, because that's what I was kind of leaving behind. And he saw that it had the exact perfect location for an elevator. Oh, it was perfect because just that it would not take away from the house at all. It basically, you had a linen closet there. You weren't losing any room space. You weren't losing a room at all. Like some people have to lose part of their room or whatever. And again, because it fits in, you don't really even notice it. You know, it's just a door, but nobody knows where the door goes. So all we lost was a linen closet and then my son's closet, but we had a new part like built out into his room, which also didn't make a big difference. Like he's got a big enough room and it doesn't look that odd that you now have a closet like coming out. So, no, I mean, you would think it was always here. It's a good location, so. Well, I mean, the options are basically if you have a house with stairs and you can no longer, or it's not safe to carry people up and down the stairs, then you have to look at the options as far as like either you change your living arrangements around, which we were doing already when we moved in anyway. But it wasn't just Sophie I had to think about, like my daughter. It's like everybody, like my dad's in a wheelchair, my mother's getting older, I'm not getting any younger. So it was also, you know, what kind of elevator do you get? And that was based on, again, recommendations from people. And it had, again, to do how many stops. Like it was the height involved, like there was measurements and a lot of things I don't know about. But it was interesting because there was a lot of brainstorming because nobody really knew the answer. And I guess every time it's different, right? Everybody has different needs and the sites are different, so. I mean, there were some things they hadn't done before too, so. It's a standard type elevator. It's not like a special model or anything else. They just make it so that I think what they need to know is how many stops you need to have and that depends what kind of tower you get and what elevator you get. And probably also in here, it depends, I guess, the size of the car too, right? Because there was a certain amount, they were always measuring like how deep it was. And we needed to make sure that we had enough room, and that determined how far out we had to go. And how much we were going to lose, if anything, up there. So the thing is, if we would have had to put a door or a shaft all the way up, we would have had to actually move the wall up there because we wouldn't have had enough room to open doors and do wheelchairs. So that's why the gate also worked out great. Normally what we do when we come home is you come in, so I usually have this ready if I go upstairs, like if I bring my dad home, we go upstairs. So everything is flush so the door can swing all the way back. So we can just come in and go in the elevator. Okay, so the doors have to be closed for it to work. Okay. So it's 1, 2, and 3. And then it stops and the door unlocks when the elevator is here. And then we also have this to open the door. And then you can come and go into like the living room. So like for my dad, he's never down in the family room floor, but he's here. That's the 3rd floor. That's the mud room.
And that is why this house works.
Totally. So you just keep holding it in and it automatically stops when it's here. Then it unlocks the gate. And then we can get in and out. We decided to put a gate as opposed to a door here because we didn't want the whole shaft enclosed. We wanted it to be open. We wanted it to look unobtrusive, that it kind of fit in. So this was all original stuff here. That wall was all original. We lost the wooden floor here. There was a linen closet built in here, which we just, removed. And this was my son's closet where the shaft is now, or the tower. So then we go on, and then I close the gate.
Okay.
See ya. Normally, you don't have it open like that, I don't think. I looked at somebody's elevator before I had everything done, and theirs started, and theirs was in the middle of their garage. Like it was in the middle of the garage, not a mud room, but the shaft started in the middle of the garage, like towards the back. So I'm thinking, that's like on both sides, you're now affected because it's taking away, right? Like it's not off to one side. Because it had to go through, yes. And I think theirs was either, it was not a side split. It was probably a 2-story or whatever, but I think it had 3 stops. But it was the same, but it was enclosed all the way up. So like you get to her bedroom at the top, because it also you have to look at, because you don't always open from the front, right? Depending on where you stop. So that was also an issue, I guess, with what kind of elevator you could go for, that you would have access from the front and the back. You have to have professionals come in and know that it will work because they know the measurements. Because I would have no idea how much space you need as far as a wheelchair is concerned. Like it's not just the wheelchair also, because I'm in the cab with Sophie, right? So it's not like you just put the wheelchair in and you push a button, because I'm not going to leave her alone in there. Bathing was also going to be an issue. So again, you have to remember we lived with no elevator and with small little 2 bathrooms up here for a year, 6 months. Maybe it was only 6 months. So originally this was 2 bathrooms. One of the reasons that we also liked this house was because of the main master bedroom, so that my mom could have her own space. And initially this was 2 separate bathrooms, so she had an ensuite. So that was a big feature that we really liked, so she could have her privacy without me and the kids interfering or whatever. And this was also a small little bathroom that had a much narrower doorway. And then it had a small little bathtub over here. So imagine the wall was actually in front of here, was where the wall was originally. So this was 2 bathrooms. And they had like a little bathtub here. They had another bathtub on that side. The toilet was here. And then they had a big counter dresser type thing, probably like this. So it was very difficult also because the door was narrower. There was a toilet here and there was a bathtub. To get Sophie in, it was almost like you'd sit her on the toilet before you could move her into the bathtub. But it worked for the time being. Then we decided that we were going to knock out the wall and make this into one large bathroom. And the main things that we wanted to have was a roll-in shower so that we could get Sophie in and out. We wanted a heightened toilet for my mother. We were also talking about safety bars for her. And we also wanted a sink that was wheelchair accessible, meaning if someone is in a chair, that they could roll up and still use the sink and the counter space here. And then the discussion was, as far as the bathtub was concerned, I wasn't going to put Sophie into the bathtub because for me the shower works much better. My mom still wanted a bathtub, so we kind of got one slightly smaller. so that we still had the bathtub, and that way we got a little extra space in the shower area, because if I'm in there with Sophie, it's the two of us and a commode chair. So the roll-in was basically, there was a lot of discussion as far as we wanted to come out as far as possible so that the shower would be as large as possible, but you needed to have this hump so you don't want the water running into the bathroom. The hump is here. So this is actually, it was, I think, a piece of wood that was under here before they put the concrete down. So that's how they formed the hump. And then the whole issue was as far as like the size of the tiles, because you wanted this to be as smooth as possible. You had to use smaller, not bigger tiles because of the hump. And the smaller the tiles, the more grout you have, and the more grout, the more grip someone has if the floor is wet. So that's why we went for the smaller tiles in the shower, and we went for the larger tiles in the rest of the bathroom. And then also in the shower we have the safety bar, also used as our towel rack. And then this is like a handheld, so I can take this out of here to like shower Sophie, but we can use it as our own. And then of course you weren't going to have a door here because that would interfere again with being able to roll in. So it worked out that we could get this rounded shower curtain, and then I made the shower curtain and put chain in the bottom. That was a new issue. So the thing was, if it didn't have chain, it wouldn't stay here, first of all, plus it also prevents the water from going out. That was the suggestion from the contractor to put something there because, of course, I didn't follow through or think about where are we going to put the shampoo and whatever, and it's wonderful. Originally, we were going to have some fold-down bars from the wall, so we reinforced the wall before we tiled it and everything else, and then we decided it wouldn't look as nice aesthetically. We wanted it not to have safety bars, because they would be basically this huge metal bar on both sides. So then we also talked about the issue about just having one or having a permanent kind of like L-shaped thing. But we ended up going with having safety bars over here, which are dual purpose, so they would work for the bathtub and for when someone's on the toilet. You can always put up safety bars if this does not work or is not good enough. The other issue then was also that when my dad was here and when Sophie were here and we were using the living room and the dining room to be able to also access the backyard. And we really liked our patio doors, but the problem is that when you go in and out of the patio doors, the runners, or I guess the guides or whatever, are quite large here. And especially my dad's wheelchair would always get stuck on here. So what we ended up doing is we had a ramp built, which actually is in the shed right now, but there's a ramp that you can put there, and we just put it away in the winter. And it comes right up to here on this side. And then we have a ramp also that we put down in here, and you actually have the metal bar that it stops. So, but I mean, because we don't use the back door right now in the winter, we put everything away. So initially what we had to do is when we decided that we were going to have an elevator put in and renovate the bathrooms, the cost required that we needed to get some funding. And we needed to look at who was going to be using the things that we were doing as far as changes. So it was going to affect, obviously, Sophie, my daughter. It was going to affect my mother, who lives here, and it was also going to affect my father, who's in a nursing home, but who does come home, and we bring him home for visits. And we wanted to have the option to be able to also bring him home and keep him overnight or over the holidays. So then we had to figure out what was the best way to spend our money, what was important to get covered through funding, you know, what the essential things were, who needed what. And then had to look at who we could get funding from, who we would qualify, like where would we qualify. A lot of things, you had to look at the ages of the people too. So with Sophie, we had to look at different children's charities that would possibly give money towards funding for like home renovations. But obviously they don't cover anything for my parents. So there we had to look at where we could get funding that would cover, I guess, elderly people who still wanted to remain in their home and what was required to be able to make it safe and accessible. So we had to get occupational therapists involved, and we had an occupational therapist for my parents and then a separate one for my daughter, again because of age, like children versus adult, and went through basically the house and looked at, if you need an elevator, why do you need an elevator? Where do you need to stop? What rooms do you need to access? In the bathroom, it was, what are the safety issues? And then you had to go through the whole process as far as like finding out who would be able to cover those amounts. And everyone has a maximum, so we didn't know how that would all work out. And you needed to first apply to see if they would even accept your application for funding. And then once you gave them the basics and they said, okay, now here is the actual form for filling out for funding, and get the quotes and fill in the needs and get occupational therapist or probably a doctor that would also be able to do like the medical side of things and figure out what was required for medical or physical reasons. And that, actually, I think one of the charities I contacted in November and had a response prior to Christmas, which was surprising, but I remember them calling before Christmas saying that they are giving us a certain amount of funding towards Sophie's elevator. So that was a Christmas present, and that one went very quickly, like very quickly. It was like probably less than 8 weeks that I got the response. And then the other one where we had to look at seeing to get funding for the balance of the elevator and for the bathroom took also from probably the beginning of November, but we didn't have everything finalized until February, but we had to have letters go back and forth because there were certain issues or things that they needed to either have clarified, had to be filled out specifically, like who exactly will benefit from, say, having a safety bar or a roll-in shower or a bathtub or a heightened toilet. And I think the elevator was a pretty well a given as far as, because Sophie and my dad are both in wheelchairs, but the bathroom we had to kind of, I don't know, justify what we were doing and why. Well, you have to keep asking everybody and anybody that, I mean, for me specifically, it would be anybody and everybody that deals with my daughter, because it's through her that I need to find out that it's for her benefit that I need, to make the changes. And then as far as for my parents, I mean, normally, I guess with parents, it's through CCAC that you need to start there and get a caseworker in to find out if your home is safe for someone living there, and what changes you need to make or what changes you could make, to make it safer so somebody can continue to live on in their home. Our main goal was to be able to have us live together, and we didn't know at the time if that would or would not include my father on a full-time basis, but we had to look at as if he was going to live here and come home to live. And, I mean, Sophie was going to grow up in this house. And, I mean, a lot of things did happen. Yes, we had a lot of stresses and things going on, but also, I guess what it boils down to, you also need a really good support network and families and friends around and people that you can bounce things off and ask questions. And I was lucky enough to have that. A lot of my friends have children who have disabilities, and some of the parents have kind of been through this before I got there. I also put it off and delayed it as long as possible, so I kept thinking, no, I can do it. And we moved in not really knowing, and we didn't have anything in place. Like, we just moved in and we're hoping then, okay, then now we need to talk about what renovations can we do? Can we get funding? The thing is, it still worked because we had the family room and, Sophie could stay down there. During renovations too, one of the things that we had to consider was we only have the 2 bathrooms that had bathing facilities, let's say. We have like a powder room, but we had nowhere else to bathe. And you always think, oh, it'll only be a week without a shower or tub, but as far as construction goes, that never works. So we were lucky enough that we ended up having the contractor put one of the old bathtubs that they tore out into the basement in the laundry room. And that's what we used. They wired it, like they did the pipes and everything, and so we would bathe in the basement, but that's okay. the things you got to do. But it worked out really well. I mean, I would then carry Sophie downstairs, but I mean, it would work. I mean, and I guess other people thought, well, what's the big deal? But it's like, well, you can't go for like weeks on end without a bath or a shower or something. I mean, and you can't be guaranteed that they're going to say like, well, in a week we'll have a bathtub in there. Well, it takes them a week to just pull everything apart and you still have nothing. Because, I mean, the thing was, I'm here for the long run. This is like my house until whatever. I can't look after myself, I guess. This is my forever house, yes. So, I mean, the other thing is, yeah, we had wonderful contractors. They had experience. I mean, whenever you look into getting funding, you always need to have at least 2 quotes. And we got 2 quotes. And actually, both people who gave us the quote were great. The reason that we went with the contractors that we did is you get a feeling, you have a rapport. They looked at things a little differently, like not your standard, this is how you renovate, and when you put in an elevator, this is what you do. It was their idea as far as the gate at the top of the stairs, which I think is just wonderful and makes a huge difference. And it doesn't look like you have a house with an elevator. Like it doesn't, it fits in so nicely and it works, you know, and there's different things that we tried that we never did before. And that was one. And, you know, also with building the ramps, I mean, there's different things that they said, well, let's try it. And if it doesn't work, we won't be surprised if we hear from you in a few months. And, you know, we just were very lucky that we got the right person that you could talk to. And I wouldn't like, if I had a question, I asked. And if I didn't like their answer, I called Tanya and or my brother. And it was like, you know, I mean, especially just because you get funding doesn't mean it's still your money that you're using and you don't need to just let them do what they want. It's wonderful because Sophie can get around too. I mean, for her, that she doesn't have to be stuck in one room or one location. I mean, especially when we have more than one floor. And so she's able to get out in the backyard and she's able to, when she comes home from school, if there's people here, she can, you know, I can bring her here without having to like carry her, or I have to think about the logistics as far as like, if I have to carry her up the stairs, well, there's a wheelchair where I take her out of, but where do I put her when I take her upstairs? You know, I don't have another wheelchair to put her in, or I have to put her on the floor. Is she safe to be alone if she's the only one here? Or, you know, who do you ask to look after her? It's not their responsibility. So, I mean, the thing is, I mean, the biggest thing, of course, is being able to, that she has her own bed and her own room and I can take her upstairs, and I don't know how I did it before.